February meeting to order. The first order of business is approval of the Airport Authority minutes for January 16th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I so move.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. First order of business is development of the west side of the airport, which is a holdover item from last month. Will, why don't you go forward with that?
Well, not a whole lot more to report. We do have a new nibble as far as a tenant and company locating on the airport, possibly the west side. Lee Lawson is working with that prospect. We don't know a whole lot about him, don't have an identity at this point, but it's not a spec builder. It's an aviation-related company that wants to locate in the area. It may be a little more than a nibble at this point. It may be a bite that we need to set the hook on and reel him in. But other than that, I don't have anything more to report.
Why don't we use this segue to talk about, Richard, why don't you take the floor and talk about the, I've got your map there.
Well, thank you.
And what we talked about at the council meeting last Thursday, I think it's come back up that the new sewage treatment plant, that there's some interest in putting that on the airport property.
Well, and that's what I'd like to speak with y'all about first. I've been looking at a couple of developments on 32, one directly across from Newton School and one at the corner of 13 and 32, as well as the east side improvements you're doing. And the concept that I'm trying to put together would be similar to what is typically a decentralized sewer system, where it's a step process, and you collect solids at the point of origin, which would be a hangar in the airport case, would be the home in the case of residents. And so you pipe that supernate to treatment facilities, and all this can be built below grade or at grade or below grade. And then the disposal is groundwater injection at a shallow point. And just looking at the property, and I don't know what the flight restriction zones are coming from the runway and the height that would be, I don't think you can build directly in line with the runway. And so what I've done is,
this is the area that I was thinking about right there.
From a preliminary standpoint, and we were looking a little bit further south at the south end, and we don't know, but what we'd like to do is start with the airport authority first, obviously, and see if there would be an interest in allowing the city to purchase that property for the decentralized sewer system. I've talked to a geologist and an engineer that have done some of those systems in West Mobile. It looks like with what would be 80 acres on the south side, you could potentially get as much as 1,500 to 2,000 units connected to that. And to me, it allows the city to be a little bit more deliberate in how we work on capacity issues and rehabilitation issues that affect capacity as we rebuild and improve the infrastructure of the sewer system. And it would also allow us to continue some development in some areas so that capacity doesn't become a problem with wanting to continue to allow development to occur.
I invited Hank Eubanks with Volker. We had this conversation the other day, and I think as far as grant assurances, this is okay as long as we don't have a polishing pond. That would be a tertiary treatment where we have birds.
I'm sorry?
Birds. I mean, we're concerned about birds.
Right.
So
and yeah, this would not create any ponding. Everything would be subsurface. And
wow.
Now, if it failed, there may be some ponding, but our goal is to do it right the first time and not have that occurrence. But
so you would treat the effluent. You would do some type of settling. Would you tell me?
Well, what you wind up doing is it's a different system in the sense that all the solids, it'd be like a primary treatment scheme at the house, and what is basically a glorified septic tank, and then an effluent chamber where clear supernate actually, well, maybe not particularly crystal clear, but without solids, is pumped into this treatment process, which is a biological process, and it's got like a trickling filter type system in place. And then as it goes through that system, it's pumped into the effluent disposal field, which is all underground. And the beauty of the backside of the airport is, from, you know, a little bit of knowledge I have of it from Barronfield and Foley, was that there are fly zones in restricted areas that extend from the runway, so that you know, they don't want any houses and sometimes trees to be in the way of that fly zone. And y'all know more about that than I do, but I just wanted to kind of touch base with y'all and see if that's a concept that you may be able to consider. And then if we do the east side stuff, it would be you know, an obvious place for those places to dispose of too, instead of the disposal system we're talking about. And I need to get a little bit of geological information on the site before we can kind of look at the cost of the land versus the, you know,
Sure.
ability to treat, you know, how many units we'll be able to apply to that. But if it works out, you know, I think it could be a win-win for everybody in terms of, you know, having a system that doesn't stress any more than what we already are stressed with the collection system and transmission system in town.
How many acres, how many acres do you think you'll need for this system?
And that just depends on how good the geology is, and it depends on how many units we can apply to it. I talked to Donnie Cunningham with South Alabama Utilities in West Mobile, and they've done many of these. And he's looking at an 80-acre piece that he thinks he can get 2,000 units, you know, that it will treat and properly dispose of effluent of 2,000 residential units. That's about 300,000 gallons a day. And so I mean, and you know, it may be this is one site for that geographic area, and it may be we find other property in other places.
There's 250 acres on around the airport that we have available. Probably 70 of it is on the east side, and probably 110 is on that west side. That's really is going through the advantage site process, and it's pretty developable. But everything else, I think we could figure out a way to work with you on.
Well, I'd love to do that, and if we can identify those parcels, and you know, even if it strips along the runway that we have access to, that you know, will never, other than maybe some periodic maintenance, if you know, if that's suitable property, then I mean, we'd want to investigate all that in terms of disposal area. And the units, you can pass this around. Those are the treatment units. And there you can see the one on the cover is buried, so it's all low profile infrastructure, and it's a concept that's worked well. The cost from the South Alabama utility end of it, they wind up charging about $6,000 a lot, which is pretty cheap compared to some of these other systems. And now there is some extra maintenance, and the treatment cost may be a little bit higher because we do maintain the solids we pump those out, and you know, 10 to 15 year time frames are what we're looking at for that, and maintaining the pump, which is not a grinder pump per se, so that you don't have wear and tear on the impeller and those kind of things, but it's a turbine type pump, and they're highly efficient and can pump against a pretty good head, so we can move these things further away and still pump that effluent to the plant. So.
Joe, Richard, as part of the advantage site process, we have geotechnical testing on the west side.
Okay.
So you know, if we can share those reports with you, it won't be maybe the exact site you're looking at, but it'll at least inform you of some of the general soil conditions.
Right, and thank you. I'd like to get those from you, just to share with the geologists that we talked to this morning. Dan O'Donnell's the geologist for the water system for the wells we've been putting in, and we're looking at doing some water table monitoring at those wells to make sure the capacity of the wells isn't taxing the aquifers that we're pumping out of. And so we're looking to do a plan there, and one of the well sites we have on County Road 33, we're looking to add additional wells, and we just want to be able to make, you know, have some justification for that capacity before we get started with that. But he's familiar with these, and he's worked with with the South Alabama Utilities on some of these systems in West Mobile as well, so he was
Well,
very.
historically, I mean, when we bought this land 12 years ago now, I mean, they always talked about a south sewage treatment plant.
Right.
So it's always been, it's in the minutes. I went back and looked at old minutes.
Right.
And it's always been something that's been talked about. You know, I'm glad it has legs now.
And I will tell you, there is a
Yeah, there's a
plan that
plan.
was created. And the only issue with that is that depending on where we're gonna dispose of that effluent, because the little bit of, and I forget the little tributary that's over there pretty close, but we would have to get A&M to model wherever that discharge is, and they would have to set limits on what that treatment plant would have to perform to. And this is a little bit easier to permit. And if we're looking at a force main to carry that effluent maybe into the bay or maybe all the way to Fish River, we're looking at significant costs where when you start bundling these together in different locations, you may be better off doing this type of system in that south and southeast part of what our service territory is. So that's what we'd be looking at trying to do eventually, is to leapfrog off of this and to find other locations to accomplish the same goals.
You mentioned one time the south end there, Richard.
Yes, sir.
What would be above ground just when those are open?
Yeah, just when those are open,
Y'all think we'll ever have an ILS in the Fairhope on the 6,000-foot roadway? I can't.
Not with GPS is providing the same minimums.
Yeah, I can't see it happening. That would be the only reason I'd say you wouldn't.
I mean, unless we wanted a more advanced lighting system, which that would extend out on the center line, but I think, you know, most of the restrictions we worry about are, I mean, that Volker would be concerned about would be height restrictions, but.
Yeah, and we would focus those anywhere as that, and I, you know, if the flight zone expands upward as you get off to the side of the runway, we would want to be in an area where we're not going to be causing any problems with the maintenance that we do on those systems with any incoming flight. But now we would want to try to incorporate the disposal system perhaps in front of the, and I don't know how those regulations exist in terms of having equipment go in and put in infrastructure, you know.
We would just have to do a,
So looking on that map, where on the south end are you looking at?
we would just have to tell the FAA what we're gonna do and do a note on. What I'm doing, I asked our engineer, we talked preliminary, I know about your plans, but we have certain grant assurances from when we take the FAA money.
Yes.
And we're investigating those grant assurances to make sure we don't violate those.
Okay.
So that would be the only deal killer that I
Right.
can see right now.
I understand. Well, and I'll do everything I can to help promote anything that you want to do with the east side expansion, you know, and if we can work it so that it partners with what we're doing here, I think that would be, and it may be we need to maybe look at other places alongside, you know, the property.
We've got lots of land, and it's underground injection. I mean, we can.
It'd be nice if we
figure
could
it out.
take the land we had.
Yeah.
And don't misunderstand, the wastewater department would fund the purchase of that, you know, over some time. I don't know what that time would be. And we'd create a business model that would be obvious for everybody to understand how that would work, but.
And that needs good level flat land or not?
No, sir.
No. That's a good thing.
We got some other stuff.
We got some.
Now, Grady ponds and swamps are not exactly the best property to put disposal.
We've covered up those Grady ponds.
But if it's okay with y'all, and if I can maybe get somebody just to punch a few holes in the ground, just to kind of give us an idea, would I talk to you, Joe, about timing wise and coordination wise?
And I'll get Hank Eubanks, our engineer, to coordinate with you.
Okay.
To make sure whatever we do with Volker.
Okay.
He's our engineer of record, and you know,
Right.
they would have some insights too.
Okay.
So. But we make sure the grant assurances are not
Certainly.
are not violated, and we'll go forward.
Thank y'all very much.
One more thing while we've got
You
you.
know that intent is that same thing there, to be all the way down this side one day.
Okay.
So just for reference, won't be as far over.
Won't be the second one.
That's this one.
Yeah.
So is a lot of this for anticipated residential growth in the area?
Yes, sir. Everything that I've seen to date is residential, yes, sir.
But what you're talking about putting there, you said could only service about 2,000 residential units?
Well, I'm not as optimistic as South Alabama Utility. I'd say 1,500 would be a good number to hope for.
So 1,500 houses?
Yeah, and they're not, I mean, one of them that I've seen proposed is straight across from Newton School. You know, this is a regional type facility that we would have kind of a restricted area that we want to serve because, you know, if it gets too spread out, we're going to wind up having to do something in between all of it. But that would be our goal, is to know what our capacity is and kind of decide what areas we can serve, you know, without extending anything beyond what the capability of that plant would be long term.
Is that a less expensive alternative than a full-blown lift station?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, but, you know, either, and, you know, the low pressure stuff is fine, the BOD loading, and part of the reason they upgraded the plant back in 2012 was because of the low pressure systems just create BOD within the way the material's mostly anaerobic, and when, you know, the gravity systems just kind of follow along in a gravity line, and they've been out, you know, different roofs and, you know, where you have vents from plumbing from residential or commercial. So the BOD loading on the gravity system is not quite as significant, and you know, but it's more expensive, you know, obviously, but you swap it out because we're paying quite a bit of money for odor control, and you know, we've put a lot of money in the plant to accommodate the extra BOD load. So, you know, there's trade-offs in all of it. This is a self-contained system that, you know, we're not dependent on what we have now to help push it to another location.
Would this, the number just going to the city council meetings, would this be part of that 19 to $20 million, $23 million proposal to upgrade this, or would this be separate from that?
It would be separate, and it's hard to define what the cost of all these upgrades will be at this point in time. You know, the two issues are rehabilitation is an issue from an old infrastructure, and that likely will cost more money than transmission upgrades. But down the road, you know, we're still going to have to look at additional sites for treatment. And of course, this is a great alternative. And then the other alternative is to put a plant close to where high irrigation demand is, and the golf course is the best example of that. And then you can treat that water to a reuse standard where you can use it for irrigation. And that serves two purposes. It keeps the wastewater that we collect on the east side of town, for instance, from having to flow through town and tax more what we already have infrastructure issues with now for capacity. But it also preserves the groundwater resources that we have that we're now pulling out of the ground to fill up the pond to pump into the, you know, for the irrigation. So, and then, you know, we have a lot of buddy meters on the water system where irrigation systems are using our potable water, and it, you know, at some point in time we're going to have to rationalize what's the best use of that groundwater, and you know, if we have an alternative for certain applications, which irrigation is certainly one of them, then that's an option to be a little bit more conservative in protecting the groundwater supplies, and that's where the value of that is.
How long has that system been around?
They've been using them for about 15 years that I'm aware of. And just like any other new system, there have been some issues that have come out, and they have made some improvements. And right now, just talking to the people that utilize them now in West Mobile, they're very satisfied with this type of system now, and they think that when they put these infiltrator systems in for the disposal, they're pretty confident that they're not going to have to fool with them for a long, long time, which is something I like. I mean.
Okay. While we've got you, why don't you talk about the compromise we have, or the proposal for the east side handling of the waste?
Well, the east side system, what I would had proposed was basically a septic tank system that would pump into a disposal field that would be, I don't know where the fence is, this is the property, or there's a fence somewhere that comes out, and somewhere inside of that, or just outside of that fence, we would want to put 2 disposal mounds, or have 1 disposal mound in there with an alternate site. And it would be the same thing as you would put these types of septic tank systems in with an effluent pump, and you would pump into that disposal site as if it was, a septic tank system and field line. But if we can work to get this system in place, which is, I know time is of the essence for a lot of things, but then we'd forego the whole disposal system and we just pump into this.
Well, we've got, that's the east side plan that we talked about is in the proposals that we're submitting to the FAA for their.
Right.
So, and it's gonna be, it's about $112,000, and it will be paid for by the FAA, so that was a great compromise.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? I mean,
I'll continue to report back on
Okay.
progress we make and how far we get with it. And I'm trying to get enough information to where I can support something with some documentation that validates what my recommendation will be to the council. And so we'll continue to pursue it. But I do think it's a good option.
okay, thank you. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Okay, the next issue is, our next item for discussion is approval of the indemnity and hold harmless agreement proposed by CMS. Josh?
Yes, so in anticipation of the business after hours event, CMS, I guess, ran that request through their insurance counsel, and in response, the insurance counsel presented an indemnity and hold harmless agreement. And it's only about a page long, a little over a page, but in essence what it says is that the airport authority will indemnify and hold harmless CMS for any damages that might, any claims, causes of actions, or damages that might arise in relation to the business after hours event. And I think that primarily they wanted to do that because alcohol would be served or will be served at the event. My knee-jerk reaction was no, we don't need to do this because we have a lease agreement with CMS that has its own indemnity agreement where they indemnify the authority for any and all damages, claims, causes of action that occur on the leased premises. But in talking with Steve Ginger, who's the attorney for CMS, we circled back and agreed in principle to limit this indemnity agreement that CMS is proposing to make it as clear as I could possibly make it that it's limited only to this one event, and that it doesn't modify the existing lease in any other way, shape, or form. So I don't have a copy of it with me. I didn't bring one, but the indemnity agreement that's referenced here is the indemnity agreement whereby the authority would hold harmless CMS for any claims, damages, causes of action whatsoever that could arise as a result of the business after hours event. But it is limited to that day and that event. It doesn't modify the lease agreement in any other way. So that's what is on the table.
Did we get the language out that even due to neglect of one of the indemnitors? Did we get that language out?
Due to the neglect of,
that's
if the neglect is due, or excuse me, if the damage is due to the neglect of CMS or one of its representatives, it does not apply.
Even though we've identified them, it does not.
Yes. Correct. It indemnifies CMS against any claims or damages caused by the airport authority or a third party, but not by CMS.
And as a follow-up, I checked with our insurance agents, Robbie Robertson. We have event coverage that covers us, and I also asked the chamber to add us as additional loss payee to their policy, which they do events all the time like this, but no one ever asked them to be an additional payee. So we were able to do that. So I mean, life is risky, and I think we've done as much as we can to manage this risk for those 4 hours next Thursday.
You comfortable with it written now?
I'm comfortable. Well, as far as it goes, I mean, I don't like it in concept. But as far as if you're going to have the business after hours event and you're gonna limit the indemnity as much as you can while keeping the spirit of it intact, then yes.
The only attorney I've ever met who liked the indemnity agreement was the one who wrote it.
Right, exactly. I love them when they're on my side.
I make a motion, we adopt this indemnity agreement.
I'll second.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the chairman signing the indemnity agreement, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank y'all. Okay, since we now are gonna have a business after hours, next Thursday, planning's well under the way. We've got some heavy lifting to do in the next week or so, but I expect us to have, between 125 and 135 folks there, probably more than 50 or 75 at any point in time. And, we've been promised we would have several warbirds fly in. We would have some Navy, Coast Guard helicopters, and, Joe Baggett is calling all his cards in to get his buddies to fly in. So I think we'll have a nice event. David, do you want to comment?
Well, we're gonna host it in the South Hangar.
In the South Hangar.
Yeah, and we're gonna set up some displays, trying to keep people out of inside the work areas, but in the openings of the hangars, have some displays set up.
Okay. And also part of it, we'll offer tours of the Aviation Academy when people first come in. We've got that coordinated with the Baldwin County Board of Education.
So we're gonna do this in the South Hangar, south of the FBO
Yes, sir.
Center Park?
We'll serve.
Which CMS has hosted events in that South Hangar before when we had the Air Race Classic and some other things.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
That South Hangar's been used for events before. I remember with the Air Race Classic and some of the fly-ins that CMS has hosted, they've all been in that South Hangar, correct?
We had lunch out there.
We had lunch out there.
Not too many months
Yeah, when
ago.
Continental had they hosted that luncheon that was in there.
Their Beechcraft events are always in that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We think we'll have a nice event. I mean, we'll have acoustics, and we'll have there'll be some politicians there want to give speeches, and it'll be a good event. So we look forward to working with y'all to make it as good as we can.
Yep.
Okay. Anything?
We have a whole week to get ready.
We have. We have. Okay. Anything? So that's just this is an update. Pam, you want to talk about the nominations and appointment to the advisory board?
Well, now that we've approved it, we have, I've kind of drafted a process of the areas that we need to recruit for. And for the construction, for the architectural review, social media, marketing, event planning. And I think that we ought to go out on our website, on Facebook, and then people that we may be aware of that could help us in these areas, and invite them. A very short little one-pager, who you are, where you live, how much time can you commit on a monthly basis, and can you commit for a year, and in what areas can you offer your subject matter expertise. So I'd like to start going out with that and get people, because we do have a lot to get done in all of these areas. I know, though,
Can I
that...
ask you a question?
Yeah, I was just going to...
Ray and I talked, I won't speak for Ray, and apparently I'm confused. But I've talked to one architect, he's talked to a couple, I think, and they're very interested in being on this advisory committee. But I think, do we have the, we were adopting a policy for the advisory committee. Do we have that in writing yet? So we could give it to them to say, here's kind of the parameters we want you to operate in?
Yes.
And that,
Yeah.
and I did not realize that, and I got an email from you and I hadn't had time to respond. That's why I'm asking. Didn't know that's what you were looking for tonight, but we can make that happen real fast. But we need to give them a few more parameters to work
Yeah.
on what they're gonna do.
And I'll just make sure I email that out to everybody. It was basically listed in the mandate that we discussed last meeting. It was all laid out in there.
Yeah, it was in there, I didn't get a copy, but, you know.
Yeah, well, I'll just
it was-
re-email it out to everybody, and then you guys take that. And,
Doesn't make that process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a number of interested, people with great technical subject matter expertise that are gonna be able to help us as we adopt these minimum standards to make sure that they're coherent with
That's-
common practices.
One of them
That's
I
great.
talked to brought up, hey, I know y'all have a west side concept, but is that in concrete? No.
No.
I'd love to look at that and see if I could help you with
Well,
that.
we would love for them to
And
look at it,
we-
give us input.
Absolutely.
So there's always different ideas, we look at some more. If they're willing to do that for free on their time, hallelujah.
Absolutely.
I did get an email from Rhett Ross saying that someone from Continental would like to be considered to be on the advisory committee, which I think is something that has merit. I mean, we certainly are joined at the hip with them for the next 24, 25 years, and I think that they certainly have marketing expertise. They have,
They're planning.
they have lots of expertise that we could,
Especially,
and
yeah.
I'm not sure that,
Yeah, we just need to understand maybe who it is and
Yeah.
what their subject matter expertise actually would be for that
Yes.
person.
Yes.
Would be the advisory board member.
so anyway, we're just something I would like to throw that out. Okay.
And it wasn't anything you did wrong, I wasn't insinuating that. I misunderstood last month what we were working towards for this.
I didn't take it wrong.
Nobody's ever accused you of being wrong.
Vince did. All right. So do we need, we were just kind of,
You all should look at your emails this evening. I know Ray gets so many thousand, but look at your emails this evening, and I'll have that there.
okay. All right, moving to, we talked about 6 when Richard talked about the sewage, the solution for the sewage on the east side, and I think that's a good compromise. It works for the FAA and it works for us too, so.
Did I understand you to say the FAA would be
Would be, are all.
willing to spend money on that
Yep,
concept?
$112,000.
But the other concept, they weren't willing?
Well, that was a whole lot more though, Vince. It was
Yeah,
260, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just a matter of
But they're
how
on
much
board.
money, yeah.
And we submitted it to them the other way with the.
$640,000, and they just said that was, I'm not sure that's what, they just said that was just too much.
I'm talking about the new submittal that we sent back here a week or so ago.
I think that was
We
what.
went back with the sewer
yeah, we went back,
concept.
yeah.
I mean, septic tank concept.
Septic tank concept, underground septic tanks or with a low flow system.
All right.
Okay. Next issue is number 7, discussion of tenant and leases for the public safety hangar. Our public safety hangar lease expired in September 30th of this year. And we've been kind of, and I'm not gonna blame, Montgomery or whatever, but until I called them in November and said, guys, you aren't paying leases, and by the way, when are you gonna renew it? They didn't really know what was going on. It was kind of, we have a lot of dealings with the local folks, but the centralized Alabama law enforcement agency, we just don't have discussions with. So kind of where we are is, Josh wrote a letter basically telling them that they owed some extra, we're kind of bringing everything up to date. This afternoon at about 3:15, when I was coming in, I got a call from their controller, basically, saying we want to make this work. We want to move forward. What kind of solution do you see? His proposal was to pay market rent for the lease spots, and basically do a 7-year lease with a 2% annual or 2% biannual increase.
Annual being 6 months.
Every
other
2
year.
years. Every 2 years.
So out of 7 years, we get a total of 6% increase over 7 years.
We'd get there would be $1,500 a month with a discount of 20%. So it'd be $1,200 a month, which is right now they're paying $670
Why are we discounting?
because
That's just what they proposed.
what they proposed. That's exactly right, what they proposed. And then a 2% every 2-year increase with a 7-year lease.
Josh, where are we now? What sort of tenancy do we have? What sort of agreement do we have with them right now?
Right now, there is no lease. It expired. And so they being the state, is in what is called a holdover situation, meaning that they are technically staying in the hangar beyond the term of the lease. Now, the previous lease that was agreed to addresses that specific situation, and it addresses it by saying that if the state as a tenant holds over beyond the expiration of the lease, they agree to pay an amount equal to 150% of the rent as it exists at the termination of the lease. So I'll use round numbers. Joe, I think the rent was like $663,
but yeah.
dollars. And so beginning on October 1 of 2017, the amount that would have fallen due is approximately $950, somewhere between $950 and $1,000. And so the letter that I wrote was just designed to remind them that that's what the lease says, and that from 1 October through right now 1 February, they owe the 150% holdover rent for those
about $3,500
5 months.
And they acknowledged they would pay that.
So
have they paid it yet?
They have not.
that
So
means
they paid
They
it?
paid part of it though, didn't
They paid the $673.
They paid the $673.
When did they pay that?
They paid them all. They paid 3 payments like January 30th. And I told them, well,
my
anyway,
letter took that into account.
we cashed them. I mean,
Right, well, and yeah, I said, here's what the amount would be. We acknowledge receipt of these 3 checks. Here's what's left due as of February 1st.
So this is an entirely new deal with no lease or, there's no vestigial ties to the old leasehold interest?
Correct.
Whatever deal we would do going forward?
Correct, but this would not be an extension or an option to renew, if you will. This is a new, or would be, a new lease going forward. We're not tied to any of the terms of the previous.
Their lease expired.
I think in their defense, from what I understand, is, I guess until you brought to their attention, they weren't aware of the 50% surcharge, so
They
that's why
weren't aware the
did
lease
that.
had expired.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that is, you know, it's because it goes up to Montgomery and they just drop the ball, but the guys here, like, you know, that's one of the understandings from talking to the guys here, they're in the hangar, one of their frustrations, there's no communication between them and Montgomery, but Montgomery's the one that handles everything.
I haven't ever seen that lease. Does it have a insurance requirement like the?
We pay the insurance.
I'm talking about a general liability, like indemnity and et cetera, CMS.
I'll have to go back and look at it. I mean, I was looking at it for a different reason. I was trying to figure out what happens when the lease expires. But you had the original lease, and then there was an addendum to the original lease. So there were 2 components to it. And I don't recall off the top of my head if either of those had any insurance requirements like our normal leases do for the tenants of the hangars.
Whatever direction we're going, shouldn't we have that included?
That should be
I would,
consistent.
I would agree. I would agree.
So what are our options now?
Options now are to continue to negotiate with the state to not renew, but to develop a new lease for the public safety hangar, or being that there is technically no lease in place for that hangar right now, to submit it out for bids.
Has anybody mentioned the market rent number?
No, but I figured Continental charges, I think, $275 for their community hangar. Is that
For a T hangar?
no, for just to go on the?
It's different rate based on the aircraft size.
So if you just had like a Cessna 182, I think it's what, $275.
It's on offhand.
So-
They're anywhere from like 150 up to 400 depending on the aircraft size.
So if you did that times 5 in a community hangar, because you're going to pay less for a community hangar, then that's 13 something.
1,500.
If you do 275 times
Oh.
5, that's
I was gonna do 275, 300.
What would a
the T hangars.
turbine, like a King Air, what would that be?
For what?
A King Air size plane, like a turbine?
I think they're like about 250 for the T hangars, 250, 275.
I mean, you can't fit one of those in a T hangar. I'm saying in the community hangar. A King Air, or, do you have any idea?
I don't know.
I think
About $600 for a King Air 200.
That's what I would think.
But that would be about all you could fit in there too. Once you put that in, it'd take a whole hanger. But
You know, I agree that there are reasons and there are facts that are, you know, that might mitigate the reason that they didn't renew and they didn't give notice and that they didn't pay rent and that they didn't catch up until we told them. But I feel like that putting this out for an RFP gives them an opportunity to be back in that hangar, but it also gives us an objective lens to view what that market rent actually is, other than us doing what we just did here, which is, you know, how much do you think it is? How much do you think it is? How much do you think it is? So, I mean, my position would be that I think we need to determine market rent would be to put it out for an RFP to look at it, if that's one of the options that Josh is comfortable with us doing based on our legal obligations to the previous tenant.
Well, you know, Jack mentioned, I think at the last minute meeting I think of is they do provide a service to the community that you know, by them being here, the state troopers and the forest department. So that's just one thing that I think about, that there's more to it than just renting it to someone that wants to rent a hangar space.
I agree. I just, you know, and I think our mandate is not just one-dimensional, but, I mean, they have that obligation to provide that service whether or not they're in that hangar or not to the people that live here. So I just, you know, and I am a landlord, so I have to say the lens through which I color my view is you know, through that lens, that I do understand that we have an asset here. Certainly everyone has a utility. You know, if it's someone else, they might provide life flight services to sick people, and if it's the state troopers. But I do, you know, I'm one person here, but I see determining what market value is without any sort of opportunity for the market to respond is, or doing some other objective analysis, you know. And Mr. Bruce, I don't know how you would value a business if you didn't have an open you know.
Yeah, I'm wondering though if they would consider it a slap in the face if we put it out for bids rather than trying to come up with an alternative method of determining market.
I don't know, not much less than not getting paid rent for 4 months.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, I don't mean it's just business, and I absolutely think the guys are great. I just kind of wonder, as we sit around this table, are we to be friends, are we to be businessmen, or, you know, what is our role? And I think I think that's been called into question, and I think that there are people that want us to be very objective in the manner that we evaluate these things. And of course, we all subjectively, I want to say that there's Ray Hicks, and then there's also a guy that's on the airport authority that's talking here, and I'm trying to talk to you as the guy on the airport authority. And I know that there's not, you know, I know you can't do that, but in practice, I just want to say that I think that there's an asset. There's a need for that asset. We have seen people speak up and that want those assets and want access to them, and there's certainly no one that can pay. You know, the state has the capability to match a number. I mean, you know, they have plenty of assets. So.
How many planes could you put in that hangar?
I'd have to look. Didn't we determine 4 or 5? What is it, 80 by?
8,400 feet, 8,400 square feet. 80 by.
What's the door width? Does anyone know?
The door is,
I think it's 60 foot, but don't hold it.
and they've got an office in there.
60 foot. It might be 40 foot, I don't know.
Now, they got an office back there, so that would take away from some of the space for
Somebody
putting
bought that office
airplanes in
out there.
there. I'd have to go look and see. I mean, they put helicopters in the forestry department airplane in there.
But between 4 and 5, 182.
I mean, that would be my guess. You know, it depends on if you got all high wings or low wings, somehow where you can fill them in. If you have all high wings, you can't put as many in there.
And I surveyed, I mean, Joe Baggett, we surveyed the airport authority, and the T-hangar rents are between $275 and $350.
$320.
Okay, well, I thought it was $350. Okay, so somewhere in the middle, I was thinking $300 would be a fair rent, if you would. But you're right, I didn't go out and, say, I got a hangar to rent either. I didn't go to the true market.
My 2 cents says I agree with you, and I agree with you, and I agree with you, and I agree with you, mainly because there's been the insinuation that some money was not managed well, paid properly, not misplaced. And our job is to be sure we place it all where it goes, when it's supposed to go at the highest value we can get. Other than that, I would rather go get on board with them, sign the agreement, fix it, and move on. But I think we have that obligation. Now, the answer might be the high bid's $600 a month, and we slapped ourselves in the face, but at least we found out.
One thing to consider too is that if you do go the route of soliciting bids, we're going to have some sort of mechanism to actually have the state remove their planes from the hangar, because if they're not the best and highest bid, we have to be able to deliver possession, within a condensed time frame to the person who is. And so they're holding over right now. Their planes are occupying the building, but again, if there are bids and if they're not the highest bidder, then once we open those bids and say congratulations to whomever, they're going to want the right to put their planes in that hangar. So we'll have to have some sort of orderly process to where the state would remove their planes from the hangar during this bid process, so that we could actually deliver. I mean, in any lease situation, you've got to deliver possession to the tenant. So we need to be able to do that.
Sounds like an action-packed episode of Airplane Repo.
Helicopter.
I'll drive the car.
Helicopter
In the lease that expired, were there any provisions for penalties for failure to pay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if they had failed for failure to pay, which they did not do during the term of the lease. I mean, while the lease was in effect, my understanding was that $663 came in every month. But yes, if the tenant did fail to pay, we could declare them in default and evict them from the lease premises.
I know you weren't looking for but one specific clause when you go into that lease. Does it have the standard state of Alabama? We have 90 days to cancel after September 30th every year if we don't receive funding through the state?
I don't know, but I'll have to check. But again, September 30th came and went, and we didn't get any notification of any, like a cancellation, renewal,
Right.
nothing. We didn't, to my knowledge, we didn't receive anything.
But I mean, there is on most real estate, these post offices and things like that, the state can come back at any given time in almost every real estate lease they have and give 90 days notice at September 30th.
Okay.
That this didn't get funded and we're gone at the end of the year, and then you're out.
And some of I don't know this for a fact, but some of this, why they were late, is we had a new controller at the city, a new treasurer at the city of Fairhope, and I don't think the new treasurer knew to send them an invoice. I don't think that's an excuse.
That's what I understand. They didn't get an
That's
invoice.
not an excuse.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't send anybody else invoices, and we have this, but I don't think the new treasurer knew to send them an invoice, to actually said, well, why haven't you sent them an invoice? So
It's kind of, I just sold a building last year that I had leased to the State Pardon and Parole Board.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want an invoice every month. They want 12 at a time, and they don't want them until October the 1st, and they want you to predate them.
Okay.
And it just makes their system work better.
Yeah.
Which is part of the reason for the 2% increase versus the CPI. For budgeting reasons, they just wanted to set,
and just
set number.
put it in historical perspective. I talked with Chuck's uncle a little bit, well, actually, Rod played a little bit about this. He said that in 2006, all their planes were located in Montgomery, and we went down there and basically said we would build this hangar, with them if they would move their planes to coastal Alabama.
But they built the hangar, right?
They built the hangar,
Okay.
and Coleman did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the initial rate was $350 a month with a 5% escalation every year. That's how we got to $663. Over really 9 years. Actually, it was renewed once, so that's how we got to where we are now.
But that's still what they're paying in Montgomery and Coleman is a low rate.
They're,
But
I mean, they,
hanger rates are a lot
they're paying
lower
like
up there.
$500 a month in Coleman for like twice the hanger.
Mhm.
So,
That's because it's Coleman, so.
yeah. What's your pleasure?
I thought I did a good job of straddling the fence.
Well, I'm
What do you
gonna,
think we should do, Josh?
It's a board decision. I mean, I will carry out whatever y'all decide, but that's a substantive decision for the board.
Well, I mean, I think there's, I think they're essentially two choices. And I think we just, someone needs to make a motion for one and take the vote. And, to that end, I'll make a motion that we put this out for a RFP to the public for this hangar space.
do we have a second, that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion?
We've discussed it, so.
I'm against that. I think we ought to negotiate in good faith with them and try to get between $1,300 and $1,500 a month and try to do a 7-year lease. I think they're good. I think we certainly could justify that we're doing our fiduciary duty and that we keep a good tenant. I think if we open up an RFP, we could get $800 or $900 a month. We don't know what we get. But we'll double our rent, we'll have a good tenant, and we'll go somewhere else with it. So
No, and I understand this, so it is 100%, I want y'all to understand, it is a clean, objective procedure that I'm saying, and you were saying there's a subjective reason that you feel the way you do. I just don't, and I think that's how you make business decisions, is through a combination of both. So, there we go, there's our discussion, so I
I agree with both of you.
Straddle the fence well,
Is
Bill.
there another way to determine a good current market rate value?
I think actually, finding out through Gulf Shores, finding similarly sized hangars and coming up with kind of an appraisal type situation that we would figure out what the value is on that sort of space within, call it, Pensacola, Gulf Shores, Mobile, and come up with that and confirm that the numbers that we're using are good numbers, which we think they are. We have a hankering that they are, but I think that maybe is that what you're thinking?
I don't think anyone has a hangar like that they rent out. In Pensacola Aviation has it all. Mobile Signature has it all. And in Gulf Shores, everyone owns their own hangar. Now, the only thing I can put in perspective, they have those T-hangars that Gulf Air Center built. They're renting over $600 a month. That holds one airplane. Now, to hold a Navajo-size airplane, and that's a premium hangar. They got electric bifold doors, insulation, running water, electricity, drainage in the hangar, and everything. It's a premium hangar. So,
I'm doing
this one's not that nice. It's got
$300 a month down there on a 182 Saratoga. Anything like that. But those guys are buying fuel from me too. So it has more incentive to it. So it really bumps that perceived value on up. Another 50 cents.
because the T-hangars are going for about $350 down there.
That's right.
So, yeah.
And they're full.
Well, is there, does anyone know what Continental thinks that space is worth? They seem to be I see a lot of stuff piled up out on the ramp, and I don't know, they're pretty.
David, if you had that hangar, what could you rent it for?
Do I have what?
If you had that hangar, what could you rent it for?
I'm sorry, Joe.
The public safety
If you had the
hangar,
public safety hangar, what could you rent those spaces for?
I don't know. What we would pay for it?
No,
what you would rent it to someone for.
I have no idea.
You either have one person that wants it for an airplane and they're willing to pay the money to have it for themselves, or if it was me, what I'd do is I'd get it.
Get 4 or 5
I'd
buddies.
rent out hangar spaces for it to pay for itself and keep my airplane in there and have an office, and then rent 4 spaces out and help it pay for itself. That's what I'd do personally, but depends on, you might have 3 or 4 people that have airplanes that are willing to go in together and lease it.
If we were to put this off for a month, do we have a way to find out what it's worth? A reasonable way?
That's what I was asking.
That we can stand behind and if somebody comes knock on our door saying, why'd you do that? Here's our justification for doing it properly. Just a question.
I mean, certainly Continental knows what they get, you know, we can certainly get that, what they get on their T hangers, and we can get what you rent the large hangars for.
The large hangars are less per airplane than the T hangars, just because
Yeah.
when you have a T hanger, you got no one
Messes with
damages your
your
airplane but yourself. But when you're a community hanger,
But
you're at
Continental's
risk.
selling fuel also, so
Yeah.
it has a higher perceived value than that.
And we can survey Gulf Shores. I mean, Gulf Shores probably, but we can, you know, we'll survey them. I think they would help us with this too.
Can that hangar accommodate a fuel farm?
That's a whole nother, you know, that's a whole nother.
I don't think unless you'd have to go in that lot next door and they've already put drainage and stuff in there. I don't know. I mean, we've got that drainage ditch. I think it would be, I don't think there's.
In that area where Allen was using for the layout yard, I mean, I don't know what other functional, it's a question.
If I look at the size of the pad that your fuel farm's on and Allen's is, I don't think there's any property around that hangar that you could do that with. Now, if they wanted to lease that lot next to it to build a fuel farm, you might be able to.
Well, I
You're
mean,
talking about east of it.
I mean, renting a hangar with a fuel farm attached, if somebody builds that, that's a whole nother can of worms. That would be an attractive proposal. Now, who's gonna build that fuel farm?
But someone wants to pay $1,500 a month for a hangar, they might not want to pay $100,000 for a fuel farm.
Or
The
$250,000.
question is who would want to do it? I mean, it might be the landlord who want to
Yeah.
increase the value of the asset to maximize the yield.
I think the landlord really wants to focus on getting the east side built.
The landlord could increase cash flow at 20% yield on investment pretty easily, then
Yeah.
again,
I
I
say,
think
I agree.
making money it helps you spend money, and, but I made my motion, we discussed it, I think probably bringing it to a vote adds closure to my motion, so.
I just did some arithmetic, going from what, 670 a month to 1,500 is 124% increase. I'm wondering if anybody could criticize us for that.
I'm sure they can.
And like I said, we put up for an RFP, we get $600 a month, and they criticize us for losing money.
But you also, that you could get $900 for it if you sent out an RFP. I don't know this, but I doubt the state would respond to an RFP. I mean,
I think Ray called for the vote, and I think I know how we're going, and I'll support however it goes when we get through.
All right, all those in favor of sending out an RFP for the public safety hangar, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
So.
But I would like to, I would
So-
like
we
to
need-
lay this over
Right.
for a month, because I do think we could
Do
conduct.
some research. I
Do some
agree.
research and
Let's-
conduct the market value.
Can we make that a proposal? Can we make that as a second amendment? I mean,
Okay, second motion.
Second motion.
I propose that we lay this over for a month, that we assign people to go out and conduct this market value rate survey, so that we are negotiating from a knowledge-based position.
And our scope of work will be our airport, the Fairhope Airport, and Gulf Shores.
Well, wait a minute, we'll decide the
Okay.
scope, but do I have a second for my motion?
I'll second.
Okay,
Okay.
all in favor?
Well, can we have a discussion
Yeah.
on that
Yeah.
now?
Yeah.
Can we have a discussion after the second?
Yeah.
Yes.
So then what? We just table
Well,
the
I'd like to
entire
have-
issue then?
I'd like to have that knowledge before then, personally, going back possibly to reconsider an RFP.
Mhm.
But I would like to have that market valuation knowledge. And I would be up for possibly reconsidering putting out an RFP. But I would like to have that knowledge beforehand.
No, and I understand, and I will say that I just don't want anyone to lose medium-term memory, that there appeared to be a line of people wanting to spend $1 million to build a hangar. I don't know if they've all vanished or if that, where that comes from, but, you know, I think that I want that to be represented.
It should be,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think we should go back and review that list of people who were interested.
And maybe ask them, you know, I don't know, but.
Well, I know someone that's interested in that.
But I
exact
think there is
technique, so-
more research
Well,
work
do
to
we
be
do that?
done
It's a good
before
contest. Can we do that?
we
Like-
vote
I like that.
one way or another. And I would, you know, having that knowledge, I would then be open to an RFP and so forth, but we need that knowledge.
I agree. All right.
Okay, that's a motion. All those in favor of that motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it, so we will, and I guess, who's gonna do that survey?
I
You wanna
can be
help me
part
get-
of it, not all of it.
You want to help me get stuff from Gulf Shores? I mean, I can get some.
I mean,
of
get
it.
from Marissa and I get from Vic and,
It'd be
Yeah.
easier, I'm a competitor down there if you ask for some.
yeah, and I can do that. And the guy that, well, you know, the guy that has the FBO over in Pensacola, I know him, or you.
I'll get the one from
But Bill Hudgens, we can
Yeah.
answer
And they
him.
may have something over at St. Elmo that's similar sized. I don't know who owns that, but.
They all
got
one of those-
Quonset hut that,
They're all Quonset hut, but that airport's owned by the state of Alabama,
What would they
DOT.
rent those for?
They're all on, like ours, the people lease the property, they build a hangar after the lease is done, the hangar goes back to the state.
they're
So,
pretty expensive and all full. There are no vacancies.
but, you know, it's not a real
I'll find
competitive
out.
airport when you look at what ours has to offer commercially compared to what that's out in the boonies and
Oh, yeah.
not, you know, it doesn't have a long runway, they don't have the approaches we have and everything, yeah.
I can find out
I
what
mean-
Signature's getting for their two gang hangers downtown. And
Yeah, because they do have a couple, you know, they do have a couple of corporate hangars they do rent out that might be. I mean, because I'd like to look at that hangar to see if it's insulated. And I know it's got a fiberglass stack door, which is at the low end of desirability. You want it, if it's not insulated, that takes away some value from it. A lot of people want insulation in this environment, and it's, you know, a manual fiberglass door versus a bifold door that's insulated. So there's some negatives to that hangar.
We built it on the cheap. I mean, we didn't, I think it is insulated. I think the office, we did some office upgrades. It's not heated and cooled. So I mean, we've talked about putting natural gas in there at some point in time. I think.
down.
All right.
So,
Signature's got that building on the south side over there. I don't know about the one
But
facing.
along with that.
I think they have those, but behind what used to be the old FBO there before Signature took,
I don't know,
there's a
I'm not
hangar
sure
I
that
noticed when I was up there
kosher.
taking,
Call
doing some
somebody
stuff
and
up
say
at your
use-
office over there the other day. There's another hangar back there that might be
Well,
about
you're
this
talking about
size.
regional.
Yeah, I think
was talking
regional.
about the south side and down.
Oh, well, I think regional might be a little bit more.
Market.
I think they have something about that size that they probably lease out, we can find out.
Okay. All right, let's move on. The update of the Sunny Callahan Airport minimum standards. Tim?
Can I ask one more question before we leave that? Are we in the meantime going to collect rent for February and our
Yes.
50%?
We're gonna count
We're gonna go back
collect
and
the
get our
150% for,
Our
till we
way.
get renewed.
As long as they're there. I mean, they can leave at any time with no lease in place, but yes, as long as they remain there, they should pay the holdover rent.
I'm gonna address that in the meantime. Okay. I'm sorry.
No, we're gonna, I mean, you wrote a demand letter, they owe us $3,000 now, plus,
That's right.
so we'll collect that. Update the Sunny Callahan minimum standards, Pam?
Well, at the last meeting, Vince and Ray were going to go out to find,
You
yeah.
don't get even with me now.
With you, you just didn't let me finish speaking the last time, that's all. They were going to go out to identify people for construction and architectural review to help us on the panel in forwarding, to move forward in putting that information into the minimum standards. And Chip and I are still going over the other documents because the deadline is to have it ready by May. I have a copy for him.
I was gonna get another one from you.
So they were saying that they have identified some people to help with those aspects, so if they would like to address that.
Well, I mean, we just talked to them about, on my end, about their interest, and they're extremely interested. Yeah, the only hesitation was, will it preclude me from doing work out there? No. You know, I don't know that it'd give you an unfair advantage either. It's because you're going to help develop some standards and some rules that everybody else is going to read also and follow, so it shouldn't give you an advantage, and surely you shouldn't be precluded. So, from who I've talked to, I think they're very interested. I think you can bring a lot to the table, and just some common sense thing from can't see the forest for the trees, sitting on the back looking in. I think it'd be great.
Okay, so before the next meeting, do you think that those people could prepare draft language to be inserted?
We need to give them the copies of what we're working with and get their suggestions off of that, for sure.
Okay, I'll put that in the email.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of second what Vince is saying. We have architects, civil engineer, landscape architects, and then of course just architects that we're looking to for the minimum standards, and we have interested parties that are all experienced and all have both airport, hangar, working with city governments and minimum standard criteria that are wanting to be a part of it, or they're willing to be a part of it. And I've given a timeline consistent with what we talked about in our last meeting as to how long their kind of more invasive service would be needed. And so
Yeah.
we'll get their names to you and their bios and what their subject matter expertise is.
Well, I'll send out to you tonight the PDF of the minimum standards that are currently in place, and I'll send the copy of the mandates there.
Okay.
Now, what's currently in place, and anything y'all talked about changing already, that would be great information to give them so we don't rehash something and go a different direction. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we discussed that before the last meeting, so I'll just write a long email with that.
Okay. Report on the GAA reception of the Alabama Legislature's Royal Caucus.
I attended, and the General Aviation Alliance of Alabama, this is the second time they've had a legislative briefing in Montgomery. Joe showed up for happy hour, but he left before the presentation, so no comment. But anyhow, it was well received. We did our first presentation up in Huntsville with Tom Sharp's help, and we had the Speaker of the House, and Stembridge is his last name. He's the head of the Rural Caucus, and they are two of our staunchest supporters. And we had 20 legislators there. We held it off because they were tied up with something else. They counted the name tags, and there were 20. And that was a good presentation on general aviation. Actually, one thing that I did mention, the girl who's oversees the airport up in Prattville gave a presentation. If we ever want someone to give a presentation on what value an airport can bring to your community, she can hit the nail on the head. They brought about $500 million worth of money into that community just with that airport.
Yeah.
And she can give it, she can pretty much put it where everyone understands it, so.
I would like to invite, maybe we can invite her to come.
I've got her card, I talked to her about it, I think she'd be interested in coming down and speaking. She
Yeah.
said she'd like to move down here when she retires, so.
We can
anyhow,
let her
but
sky.
she can pretty much spell it out how it is. I mean, she knows what's going on. She made changes at the airport to make it more accommodating for corporations, and, you know, that's Bass Pro. That's why they put Bass Pro on the interstate there, because the airport was close to it. That's
The
just
other
one
thing
example.
that came out of it, and I've spent a little bit of time with John Egerton, he's trying to put together a pot of money that he can basically have to help industrial development associated with airports.
Mhm.
And he's getting some grant money to do some of that. So there's going to be some monies available to do some of these stuff.
And that's our intent, is to help the smaller airports, rural airports that don't have the know-how to learn how to get the funding where they can grow. And some of these rural airports, a judge from Monroeville got up and talked about how much that's contributed to their community. I mean, some of the people got up to these little community airports that, you know, and it's kind of almost a lifeblood for those airports, for that community. So it's a good cause. It's been going well.
I think there was an article in Lanyap that cited the Monroeville area airport and so forth of how they went about doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pilots for Christ.
Now, that was one of the operations they mentioned that operates out of there, which that's a great organization. Yeah.
This might not be the right venue, but it'll affect all of us eventually. The General Aviation Alliance, they have an opinion on privatizing ATC? Good.
Strong opinion.
Good.
We've already, I mean, you know, this is just a grassroots organization, and most of us are pretty much paying out of our pocket to keep this thing going, because we don't have a dues structure set up yet, but we don't really have a service to offer to people to get to offer the, you know, we haven't gotten that far. But just in the 3 things we've done with politicians, we've made a great headway, and we've made a lot of progress with a lot of people realizing the value that these airports bring to their communities. And so I think we've got quite a bit of traction and momentum going.
That alliance might be some lobbying they can do that they can justify some dues right there.
Yeah, the alliance has already, you know, done their share of sending stuff to the legislatures and communication that they're against the privatization of ATC.
Okay. David, are you going to do the flight line manager's report?
Yeah, I'll do a few of the items that I'm directly involved with.
Why don't you move up here? Go to the table so we can record you. Thank you, Josh.
So we've got the placement of the cameras. I've got 3 different companies supplying quotes. One has come in, but I've got to get two more to look at it. And the first one was very high end. It was 19 external cameras and some internal cameras. I haven't separated CMI's specific function from the airport's need, but it included the keypad, lighting up the viewing the south hangars, the back road, the fuel farm. It's a very good perimeter coverage. Also, the cameras were 3 and 4 lens, 270, 360 with IR, so they could go out in the dark. There was a few lighting changes to go with it. The first one was exorbitant, but I've got a few other companies. It was CSI. I've got DSI.
Do you mean GSI?
GSI, yeah. And then DSI is another company, and I've got 2 other ones that on this side of the bay that are supposed to be coming in. I'm not involved in improved access to the T-hangars. No work has been done on that. The repair of the weather stripping, we've got 1 quote in. It was for $20K, which I thought was way too high.
And I told Joe that I thought that was way too high.
Very high, yeah.
I just said we just didn't have that kind of money to do that.
Yeah.
So we'll.
You know, Kyle's already replaced that once himself.
Yeah.
So it's been done.
We're going to sit down and meet with the guy in a little while, maybe next month, and see if we can do that a little bit better. And I think I thought that was a lot.
The vegetation removal, I know that was given to Kyle. I don't know where he's at on it. Fire extinguishers are complete. They're all installed, 24.
On the 10-foot fencing,
I have not. That's actually County Road 13. In the last meeting, there was a proposal that a 6-foot fence of barbed wire was probably going to be acceptable, but I've not.
FAA will. We did get that. That's going to be in the grant proposal
Okay.
this year, and the FAA will pay for that. Okay.
That's
So
not really
the fact that it's on the
Right.
FBO manager's list, is there a reason to? Is there something?
This is really my list of things we're doing.
Okay.
That's
I
not
mean,
theirs.
Yeah. No, that's not. Going forward, I'll put CMS. Who's responsible? I'll put the responsible party.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. That's just. This is a list that I keep up with what we've committed to do.
Well, I know, but I just didn't know how much of it we were supposed to be policing or being involved with as far as keeping an eye on it.
And you're not supposed to do the vegetation removal. I mean,
Okay.
we're going to do that too.
Fire extinguishers are complete.
Yeah.
Security lights, got 1 quote in on that, but that's in process. I'm getting those lights fixed.
The repair of the roof leaks, 8 skylights were done. I don't know if there's 12 in that building or not, but my report was that the ones that were fixed are not leaking and there's still a few leaks left.
Well, that's what I've heard too, that
Yeah.
when we removed the skylights, we fixed the leaks. We also repaired some of the skylights, and that was kind of shot, I mean, maybe it may or may not work, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
And then to review the FOD control solutions, the only thing I'm aware of on that is that there's a FOD mat that was, I think Joe submitted.
I've got the info on it.
Yeah.
I was gonna bring that up.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about that?
The sweeping, I've looked at sweeping before, and a lot of the sweepers and stuff relocate the rocks and move stuff around, and I really don't know what the ideal situation
We tried sweeping once before, and I think it just, like you said, moved
Just
around.
throw stuff around. and
Yeah,
stuff
it just
there.
moves it around to someplace else.
I did a little research on that, and Joe found one, and I found another product. The big issue is when they built those T-hangers, that asphalt was sealed. And I can go out and blow it off before I pull my airplane out of the hangar, and 2 days later, there's still sand and rocks coming up, and it just, and I don't know what it would cost. It would be, the long-term solution would be to seal the asphalt.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that costs. If not, in the interim, they have, Joe came up with this one. It's $4,500. I got another one, it's about $5. I have to check, they're both the same. It's actually kind of interesting. The other one I got was from the guy who's the airport manager up at Coleman. He said they use it, and he said it gets everything on the ramp up. He said it's absolutely phenomenal. But they're both kind of a sweeper, if you want to pass that around, that you actually pull behind a pickup truck.
Right.
It's not motorized or anything. And
We were looking at if we could hook it up to one of the golf carts.
Yeah.
That we
Or-
could.
Yeah, I've got a pickup truck y'all can use if you need to. So, but the other one's the same way. I know the one up at Coleman they've used, and they say it absolutely gets everything. So, I
And
know
I
it's,
saw one of those the other day, and I didn't really understand what it was.
What it
when
was.
I was flipping
Yeah,
through.
this one's supposed to get up sand. I mean, it's supposed
Yeah.
to pick up every single
and
thing.
there's, I can speak a little bit more on this because I spent $2,000 on my airplane props for all the erosion on the paint and leading edges from taxiing my airplane up and out of my hangar. So after I paid that, I pull it way out on the ramp and start it, and so it's something that. And then we had another tenant that complained about
Had a
prop
couple of
damage.
tenants complain.
So
And that runs about what amount of money?
it's about. I think that one Joe said is 45. The other one I think is around 5. I think they all run about 5,000.
Yeah, it's 45 to 6 was the
it-
range, yeah.
You pull it behind the truck. It's pretty.
Is that collected in the end back there and then you empty it out?
That I don't know. I talked to the guy on the phone with the one that was up at Coleman, and I just got pictures of him. But I think he'd be more than happy to come down. I can probably get a presentation of some kind and set it up for next time. I think it's something we need to consider doing.
I stumbled across one of those on the website, and it was a triple set.
Yeah, that's what this one that the guy from Coleman that I got from this guy, and they have them for like military bases. They stack them side by side, and they'll just cut a 100-foot swath at a time.
Yeah, I would think that's something that that we're not doing it, we really aren't doing anything with it right now. So,
We swept a couple of times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you just
Yeah.
move it around. I don't think you.
Yeah, I think the street sweeper just doesn't do anything, but
No, if you don't have a you have to have a giant vacuum essentially to go out
Moves
there.
the stuck stuff.
But also
out
with
the
the
cracks
sweeper,
and
you gotta
swirl
worry
around.
about stuff that's in a crack or loose that wouldn't have come up normally, you knocked loose and lifted
Yeah.
it up.
Who would do the sweeping if we bought the?
I don't know.
we could either see if
Kyle to do
Continental would work a deal, we get bushwhackers to do it.
Yeah.
That's another option.
That's true.
Do I see a motion? Do I hear a motion to do this?
We need it.
We
There's
need
no
it.
doubt about it.
I'll make a motion that we should purchase
I'll
a
second.
sweeper of
I
this type.
I think that's real important.
So under $5,000 to buy FOD sweeper,
Well, let's say up to
up to
five.
Up to
5,000.
five, yeah.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of buying a FOD sweeper, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, ayes have it. Hey,
Before we leave that, could I ask you something on the placement of the cameras?
Yes.
Have you come to an acceptable agreement with Continental on the integration and monitoring?
We haven't, no. I mean, we just said that we were paying up to $18,000.
But you wanted to make sure they were going to integrate it and monitor it.
I wanted an integrated, I think we all want an integrated system, don't we?
Past
got the-
discussions on this were for an integrated system
Yeah.
when
It's-
Bill Stromberg was there.
Yeah, yeah, we've got the perimeter is probably a little better than what we, or a lot better than what we minimalized on this quote, because we went for adequate coverage. This is probably exceptional coverage on this first one. And it may be that quote just needs to be where we sit down and say, okay, and I've got the layout, I've got to get it, see if I can get Joe a copy of Google Maps. It's got little blue triangles and everything that shows where all the cameras are going and the view of the gate, and it's got the keypad, and then look at, okay, this may not be needed, this may not be needed. Also, they quoted me the high-end cameras are like $1,100 a piece. They're for clarity where you can see the person and actually, photo ID them and stuff. So the layout's really good. The equipment, the DVR and everything is right on the money. It's a good price, not a problem. But I think the cameras are right at the top. They're all 4K. They're right at the top of the equipment availability.
Okay.
So it may be with GSI, one thing I got to do with them is bring them back in and get another quote from DSI, bring them back in and go, okay, this is what, we don't want this camera needs to be lower resolution. The next thing they're supposed to do, in the next week or so, they're supposed to bring sample cameras, portables that I can look at and see what the resolution is, including the IRs and the distance. Because with the infrared cameras at night, they were saying we might have to add IR lights if we want to go past 100 feet. So you have to have an infrared light source, but it is a maximum security system.
Okay. Anything else in the flightline manager's report?
On the bridge over the culverts, I'm trying to squeeze a ADA approved drawing out of an architect on the advisory committee for free. So I'm working on that. If I can get that, then we can find somebody to build that. If you have a large trailer and you want to go up Highway 13 right on the right, if you're leaving the airport,
I saw
going
that.
north, you can still
Is that what we're
still
gonna
got
build?
60-foot aluminum one out there, and we'll set it in place.
Okay. Ray, do you want to do the treasurer's report real quick? Real quick. Yes, I'm sorry.
You guys, you got a copy of this from Joe, with the agenda that we sent out. I mean, this is kind of there's nothing extraordinary to talk about. We got the rent, that we mentioned earlier from the public safety hangar, and that's gonna come in, and it looks like we'll have that cash flow coming back in. So other than that, and maybe, are there any questions on any of that?
I do want to comment that the way we do the PNC money market account, which is $124,000, is basically the money that we'll have for our match next year for our 2017-18 grant. The match will be about $150,000, so that's kind of my way of keeping up, making sure we have the match. So we need $16,000, $18,000 more to get the match, but we'll have the match for that. We've done a lot of maintenance activities over the last 6 to 9 months between replacing all the lights and some of the upgrades we've done. I think it needed to be done, but we need to be cautious of it going forward of where we spend our money, because we want to make sure we have the monies that we need to build out build out the east side. Okay. Anything else? Any other business from the floor? Anybody else have anything they want to offer?
I'd like to say my name is Kyle Strong. I'm with the Dewberry Engineers. We're just interested in seeing y'all's or what you had planned for expanding or any kind of consulting work. I know I worked with Volker was over the new East Apron, and I know Hank and everybody at Volker does a good job for y'all. I'm not sure, I guess they do most, if not all, your consulting work, but we just kind of want to let y'all know that, you know, we're out here. We offer all kind of engineering services, surveying, environmental design, and we just wanted to see what y'all had coming up in the future, and just kind of let you know that we're out there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Maybe anything else?
Can I ask you something?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm Gary Gardner. I have one of the T hangars out at the airport, and I'm part of a flying club called Gone Broke. I had mentioned to my flying club, I've been to a couple of pilot seminars in Gulfport and Pensacola, and I volunteered for my flight club to see what it would take to put together one of those. I don't even know if there's even space at the airport to accommodate 30 to 40 people. Do I need to talk to you all about that? I've tried to call Mr. Baggett, and I haven't been able to track him down. I just don't know where to start. I don't have to hold it at the airport. I'm a member of the yacht club. I can take the pilots over to the yacht club and have a venue there. I just didn't know if I could even do it at the airport.
Well, you might want to check with, I mean, Continental has a facility there. They would have the room. We don't have any facilities that the airport authority has that we can provide something like that.
I asked people at Continental, they said they didn't have any space there. And that's fine. I don't.
Yeah, we don't
I just
have
don't want to step on anybody's toes.
we don't have a meeting space at all anymore.
Yeah.
What kind of pilot meeting you trying to do, Gary?
I've been to two. One was put on by the FAA at the Gulfport FBO, and one was put on in Pensacola by one of their local flying clubs. And it's a pilot safety seminar.
So wings credit type
Yes.
thing?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of Pensacola, they're very good.
Mm-hmm.
Your hangar at Fairhope is not big enough or nice
Oh, no.
enough?
The T hangar.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just funny, y'all were talking about that public service. My hangar's right across from theirs.
Be nice to have it at the airport.
Well, I thought that it would be
Yeah.
nice if, since we're pilots, if we had it at the airport. I know it's not, the pilot lounge is nowhere near big enough.
Yeah.
Lounge, whatever you call it out there.
Vince has sponsored a couple of Rusty
Rusty
Pilot
Pilot.
AOPA seminars down at his FBO at Gulf Shores. They've got plenty of room for something like that.
Okay.
You can do stuff like that. There's gonna be a Rusty Pilot seminar at the AOPA thing in October. But I've been to a couple of those FAA,
What?
sponsored by someone else in Pensacola. They've done them in a small
Sir.
college or a high school?
Yeah, one of them was
Junior
in,
college.
Auditorium?
an
Junior college?
auditorium
Community
at
college,
Pensacola College, and then the last one I went to was just at the FBO at the Gulfport Airport. At
There enough room
I
in the
guess
school?
Yeah, no, I mean, I,
Well, the aviation
Yeah.
academy.
Yeah.
I thought about them. I didn't know if I could even approach the school.
if you give me some dates, I think I can do
Right,
that.
that's a good idea.
Okay?
Cause those things have 50, 75 people, easy.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think I can, is it on a weekend or is it a weekday?
It's usually a weekday night, isn't it?
Yeah.
Usually when they have
I think-
people,
I think-
a lot of people flying for it. and-
I think we could do that, maybe,
Yeah.
whatever.
I hadn't even got that far. I just didn't know
No,
where to
just,
start. And
you've got my contact information. If you give me some dates, I'll check with the Aviation
That'd be a
Academy.
good
Okay.
spot.
I've got one more thing, and I know we've taken way too long, but as part of the business after hours, we had a proposal. I'd asked Jim Walker with Google Mills. They've got a series of templates, if you will, for the general aviation models, if you will, general aviation terminals. They were contracted by John Egerton to actually develop a small terminal, a medium or regional terminal, and a larger terminal, if you will, the one that was 5,000 square feet. I asked him, I called him a couple of weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and said, well, I'd like to have something for this, for our business after hours. And he got back with me today, and he said, well, we can do this. I can do you a 1 inch to 24 feet model, which I guess is about half big business table, for $2,400. You know, it would be a scale model. You would have something that would, he said, I'll make it look more like Fairhope. You know, I'll use the basic design for that we have approved, but I'll make it look like, you know, a Fairhope rendering or something that Fairhope would be comfortable with. You know, my inclination is that 24. I mean, we haven't gone through the process. If we'd chosen him as our architect and had gone down that path, I'd be all for that. I certainly would like to show the people of the business after hours that we were thinking this is what we're thinking. But I could go either way with that, and I thought the $2,400 was pretty expensive. So, what are y'all's thoughts on that?
You know, you and I met with them in my office. They've already got 2 or 3 designs. How about if they charge us, put it on a disc, let's put it on the screen?
I'm with you. I mean, I think that's a lot. You know, I mean, I think John Egerton owns those plans. I don't think they own them. I just didn't want to spend. I mean, that kind of money.
That's a lot of money.
I mean,
Half of the
if
font
you
sweeper.
have the CAD file from John, and
Good way to put
there's
it.
probably some other opportunities to look at getting that done for maybe a third of that from
Right.
modeling and get something 3D printed up on the model. So I'm just saying there are other
I'm
options.
going to go back to them and say that we're not going to do this, but I
Or
would.
maybe they just want to make that
They just
as
wanna make
part of their
24, yeah.
proposal to.
No,
to
I asked him. I said,
There are
you know,
other
can
ways to
I
get that
separate
done.
this?
Much less cost.
Can I separate this from the, you know, the architecture? He said, no, this is a standalone engagement. Because we haven't chosen them as.
Give us some free CAD files that we can put on the screen. We'll list you as a sponsor.
And they
They've
can,
already got-
we have people that can put that into like a program called SketchUp, and, you know, you can add texture and colors to it, you know, like if we just
Can
want
be
to.
done on a computer screen and printed out.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't have to have a model. I mean,
No.
Chip, we can go steal the one out of the Gulf Shores Airport office.
Yeah, we'll just say that's
borrow
ours.
it.
You get a bill.
Yeah, how much to borrow it, yeah.
All right, well, that's what I'll do. I just,
Since we're on recording.
that's the hour shooting. I just thought that was too much.
I agree.
I agree.
Can you give me a name of somebody in your office if I get the CAD file?
Yeah, if you'll just get with me after this, I'll give you 2 email addresses to send it to.
Pam? All right, guys, thank y'all for being here, and with that, I'll have a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I second.
I need to.
A third.
All right, that's good. Thank you.
Aye.
All right, guys, thank you.